the NFL podcast. The Jets will win the Super Bowl, is what a crazy person would say.
Shut up. From the Chris Wessling podcast studio, it's Around the NFL. I'm Dan Hanzus. I got heroes here. Some of them. Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. Hearty thank you to everyone. An outpouring on the old social media of positivity and congratulations and strolling down memory lane after we made our big E is for extension announcement on Thursday's show. So thank you to everybody who said kind words. That is, look at Marc's shirt. It says be kind on it 4 times in different letters. And certainly that's what we felt from the listeners and everyone else in the business.
That was my order to them, and they responded with kindness, and I appreciate it.
Is that like a self-reminder, or you're telling others to be kind, be kind? That's what your shirt says.
It's actually my wife's T-shirt. I'll start there.
Wow.
But when I wear it, it doesn't necessarily translate into my own mood. So I'm not taking my own note.
This is that a humble brag, or I don't know where to take that?
What?
You're wearing your wife's shirt. Your wife is a slender woman herself, and you're just saying you guys can share wardrobe now. That's where you're at.
I think it's a
in your
T-shirt.
fitness
I'm not
journey.
even sure it was a female's T-shirt. It just was. I've noticed it.
But you share it. That is
Yeah.
interesting. Do you
Kinda
share
cute.
any other like undergarments or?
No, not that I know. I've usurped it. This is now my shirt. So
Okay, it's yours.
Do you ever catch a scent of it's Spirit antiperspirant?
I have. I mean, I think we've all done this in a pinch. Like
Secret?
when you run out of your men's deodorant, there have been times when I've used it was Secret. It was a version of Secret,
Yes.
and I have to say,
Teen Spirit.
It
Is this
worked.
Teen Spirit on
No,
me?
she does not wear Teen Spirit, but Secret actually worked very well.
I'm learning a
That's
lot of
that's what the ads say. That's what the ads say.
Well, I thought I would overpower it with my scent, and it did not happen.
You're
so.
right, Dan. It was very nice to hear from the listeners because they'll remember shows. There was that one thread of like it was someone's 5 favorite shows, and I can't remember half of I mean, when they tell us about it, then you remember it. But it's just been so long since you thought about some of those shows. We're now going to be entering our 10th season together, and we're becoming older men. And I appreciate when you guys remind us of some of the things you enjoyed in the past.
Oh, I love those.
It's like learning it for the first time.
Yeah, I love when we hear from the listeners like, oh, I just graduated from college. Like, I've been listening to you since I started high school. It's like, whoa, have we been doing this that long? Like,
we have.
What has happened? Where has the time gotten? And also, like I said, whether it was a private text or, an email or social media, all the people that said nice things, people that we know. Now we're going to have to start cataloging. We're going to go back and catalog who we didn't hear from.
That
Wait, you
process
guys heard
has
from
already
people?
begun.
I don't think I heard from anyone.
Or from many people.
No, I don't think anyone reached out. I'm just
Marc,
kidding.
now that we are under contract for more years with the NFL, they're going to be asking more from you. And I was thinking side podcasts, just right off the top of my head for you, 2 podcast potentials. Sports with Marc Sessler.
No, I hate that.
And it's just nothing NFL related, but all the other sports.
I don't like the way that that you're voicing that.
Oh, so you want it to be sports with Marc Sessler?
No, I do not want that. And I already told you before the show that actual clip that you do is annoying to me.
But tell me, you want it to be sports with Marc Sessler?
That's closer to it. Although I'd rather pick a different topic.
All right.
That was the
Yeah.
title of Katie Nolan's podcast.
Ooh,
sports.
Sports.
Oh, okay.
that
so we
means
can't
I'd
use
have to
sports.
start watching other
Think so,
sports,
yeah.
which sounds time consuming.
Then I had one other, and I'll keep workshopping this because I
Okay.
just assume you won't like any of them. But this guy gets it with Marc Sessler.
I like that. I
Yeah.
can work with that.
Right.
It sounds like I could hit touch on any sort of topic that pleases me.
Coming up today, one of my favorite football figures in the coaching ranks in the last 20 years, Mike Westhoff. He has a new book coming out called Figure It Out, My 32-Year Journey While Revolutionizing Pro Football Special Teams. How about that?
It's a thick book, too. I mean, he
It's
went
it's
to
a
work
thick
here.
book,
This
and,
was,
I mean, look at the flex right in the subhead there. When you say I revolutionized pro football special teams.
Yeah. I mean, that's a commanding title too. Like your shirt. It's an order. Figure it out.
Also,
Be kind.
I
also,
assume, Greg, that you've already read the entire book, considering that we're having him on as a guest
Of
to
course,
discuss
that's the
that
only
product.
way to do things.
Okay.
Right. Just powered through it over the weekend. Kevin Danger's in town. I said, Kev, I'm going to take a break. I got to read another 200 pages of Westhoff's biography with Barry Wilner. Also
host.
coming up today, Greg, one of your, I bet it's one of your better trafficked pieces. Projected starter series. You go through each division, each team, and take a closer look. Now it's time to put these teams on the slab. It's an autopsy.
All
Let's
right.
dig through it. Projected starters autopsy. How you feel about that?
I feel like you always would have liked to be in the writer's room for like a TV procedural in a different life, maybe. And this is your
that would be
chance.
nice.
This is your chance.
I do have a question, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I brought this up to you
Yeah.
also before the show. This is the time of year where all 32 teams are, generic. They're very much alive.
Right.
They've not been injured or, their
Right.
weaknesses have not been exposed.
I understand. Yeah.
And we're
Right.
calling them that they are all dead, and we're opening up their bodies
Well,
on
true,
a table.
because the rosters are a living thing, and it's very annoying writing this every year. The editors, the second you post it, of course, it's like, oh, Stephon Tuitt retired. Oh, can we adjust it? Oh, this or that happened. Oh, this, and it's like,
Do you
we just
update?
gotta rewrite this for the next 3 months. What are we
Well,
gonna do?
Let me
Well, they did not update the Alex Mack retirement, so maybe the
Okay,
cutoffs
maybe
occurred,
the-
let me clarify. The autopsy is
Sure.
on the series itself.
Okay.
So now Greg, his football mind has dug through all these teams, and now we're going to pick through the remains of Greg's insane rantings.
I still
Right,
have a question
I
or
value,
two. But
I like
okay.
the rantings, the takes that go with it more than the projected starters themselves.
Speaking of insane rantings, on the back of the Westhoff book, how about this? What do they call the little pull quotes? Or
Yeah.
It's basically
Blurb.
a blurb, yeah. We called Mike Westhoff the mad scientist. He changed the game. Rog Goodell, NFL commissioner. All right. All right, Barry Wilner.
Do you think Goodell
and
wrote
Mike
that,
Westhoff?
or did a Goodell handler
You know what?
tap that out?
How about you ask Mike Westhoff that when he's on the
I
show a
will.
little
I
later
promise
today?
to ask that question.
It's a very outspoken man.
I think Wilner reached out to a PR representative with the NFL, told them what they were looking
Barry
for, and then they
Wilner.
got an email back. I don't know who wrote
Well,
the
that's
blurb.
right. That's half the equation. But
Now we're doing an autopsy on the back blurb for the Westhoff
Just
book.
trying to let people know this is how the real stuff goes down.
But before that, let us hit the news.
It's because they were going to bang.
Time for news and notes presented by Upwork, where you can build a team that will build your business. Learn more at Upwork.com. All right, listen. Aaron Rodgers.
Thought he'd be out of the news this offseason. Not so.
Yeah, he says he could definitely see the end coming to his career. We know he's back after redoing his deal with the Packers. Of course, this is also surprising that he lost his number one wide receiver, Devontae Adams. You wonder if he would have had that information in hand. I guess we've heard that maybe he did, but I don't know. Would he still made the same decision about going back to Green Bay? Who knows? And we'll see how this season plays out. We'll see what Gregg has to say about the Packers roster a little bit later. But Rodgers is introspective right now, Marc, and he is thinking about a future that doesn't rely on football, because it's not, he said, about the game. The game to him still comes easily, but we've heard this so many times. It's everything around it, the preparation, the hours needed to be a truly great quarterback, and he is as the back-to-back MVP, of course. So Rodgers, maybe this is it. We shall see.
I think it's very much I'm letting you know that next season could be the end. The one after that could be the end. The one after that could be, because he's essentially 3 one-year deals. And this is what Aaron Rodgers has been saying for a very long time. And there was a period where every quarterback released a press release saying, I'm going to play until age 45. Well, I don't think with Aaron Rodgers that's the same DNA within him that Tom Brady has. His mind is, when I start hearing this from any athlete, I agree that he can go be as proficient and talented as possible on the field. I think he can separate that. But mentally, when you're playing football and you start thinking about the fact that this is not what I want to do with my life anymore on some level, that would concern me from a starting quarterback. Not overly concerned. He's a compartmentalizer. He thinks differently. He's going to write his own original ending. I know that. It's not going to be what people expect. But when this is in the head of your quarterback, the end is near.
I mean, the guy turns 40 next season, 2023. So he'll turn 39.
Snuck up on us because he started. He waited on the bench for 3 years behind Favre. This is his 18th season, but he hasn't started all those years.
Right, and it's not none of it's surprising. You're right, Mark. Year to year. Then again, he's set to make $59 million next year, and $49 the year after that. You gonna pass that up? The way it's structured, I don't think he has to give back any guarantees, because that was one thing I was curious about when I heard this. Like, wait, isn't he guaranteed money into next year? No, not really. I mean, he is and he isn't. He got the big signing bonus, and the salary's just huge. But I'm with you, Mark. I don't think he's going to be playing that late, and that would mean that this could be. What if it has a bad season? I don't know if he's going to want to be the sixth best quarterback in the league, but $59 million or $59 million in 2023 would be hard to pass.
What if they have a playoff
up.
meltdown? It's like you have to go through the whole process all over again. I think it could be enough to convince him to ejector seat. That's
more or less what he said in his comments. It's the other stuff that wears on you and makes you think about life after football. Tommy obviously set the bar so high with playing so many years, but I could definitely see the end coming. In other news, retirements. Let's get caught up with some roster retirements. Alex Mack, Stephon Tuitt, Romeo Crennel, who after nearly 40 seasons in coaching, he announces retirement at age 74. But these are guys that had big years, Tuitt and Mack. They are walking away from the game with something left to give.
Yeah, Tuitt, 29. I mean, was a all-pro type of player in 2020, was one of the keys to that defense, and I think was one of the reasons why they were so bad last year. People kind of sleep on the fact that the Steelers' defense was mediocre, and Tuitt had some off-field stuff. His brother had passed away. He had some physical stuff, so they're used to not playing with him since he wasn't there last year. But also, that's a major loss, and the 49ers think that Mack is a major loss too, because they just spent the last 3 months trying to convince him to change his mind, and he didn't. And so they have a couple questions on their offensive line right now.
Right, because Mack has been nothing but consistent his entire career, a 7-time Pro Bowler. He was a favorite of Shanahan, who was his offensive coordinator in Cleveland in 2014, the year that Shanahan was there for 1 year. The offense got out to a great start. They were like 7-3. And then earlier on in that, Alex Mack suffered a season-ending injury. The line fell apart. The whole offense fell apart. A year later, Shanahan brought him to Atlanta and then tugged him to San Francisco. And if now that he's gone, Jake Brendel is at center, it looks like. And the interior of their line, if you go look at what PFF thinks of it, is a lot less glowing than a year ago.
Right. And to it, we can skip this part of projected starters. Like, his loss is a reminder that this defense on paper not that exciting. Also, give Romeo, what a career. Not just the time with the Giants and certainly the Patriots, but even, I know it was a lot of bad moments as the Browns head coach, but here's just a fact for you. There have been 13 coaches that have coached the Browns since they returned. Only 3 of them have ever won 10 games in a season. So I think it's a losing proposition. You're fighting uphill when you become the Browns coach. And Romeo Crennel, maybe he didn't do that bad a job, is what I'm saying.
So they had this sort of magical 10-6 campaign with Derek Anderson at quarterback, a deal with the devil type of scenario where he was essentially like a raging upscale Pro Bowler for 1 season. They gave Romeo Crennel a big contract extension, and the next year, I think they went 4-12 and didn't win more than 5 games for another 6 seasons. So you're right, it was an outlier, but I think he might have been, there are others out there, the nicest coach that we've ever. He's like one of the nicest men, and just like never really you saw him get like angry or unflappable at anyone.
Maybe BB's favorite, Belichick's favorite. If I had to guess who is like his favorite assistant in all of these years, my guess would be Romeo. Those hugs that they would have at the end of
Eric
the Super
Mangini,
Bowls.
perhaps.
You could ask Bill Belichick on Thursday when he joins us on the show. Just kidding. That will never happen. NFL Network's Tom Pelissero reports that the 49ers, well, have we ever asked?
We have not extended an invite. So
And how about we have some
I think we
unfinished
have
business?
at the owners' meetings. Because we kind of put the spread. Let's try to get everyone and see who says yes. I think we might have asked.
But that's like speed dating. We have to make it
Yeah.
special
Right,
for
we
Bill
had to
Belichick.
button up the Belichick letters.
Sure.
Check out Marc Sessler's long form when he was a boy writing to Belichick and he got a letter back. We got to button that up. We got Gregg and the crush that he's had on Belichick all these years. I obviously have a lot of respect for Bill Belichick, despite some of the agony he's brought to my life. Bill Belichick, let's get him on the show. Why don't we set that a goal now that we are staying here at the NFL to get Bill Belichick on the show before the end?
I'll be like
Sean Kelly behind the glass just gave me a very earnest thumbs up, like
no problem.
working on it.
Yeah.
way to go, boss. I'm into it. I'll remind.
Way to go, boss.
Hey, Belichick, do you remember me? I asked you a
got
question.
it, Skip.
I asked you a question about Antonio Pierce at the 2007
He
Super
would
Bowl.
remember.
My first Super Bowl. It was a big deal to me at the time.
It's like, no.
Ba 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 ba.
It's like, I'll really get a good answer asking about the other two.
Anyway, Jimmy G. Jimmy G. What's up with Jimmy G? NFL Network's Tom Pelissero reports that the 49ers have excused Jimmy Garoppolo from the team's mandatory minicamp. He is recovering, of course, from off-season shoulder surgery. He was not traded by the 49ers, obviously, to this point. And now you wonder where he is in the team's pecking order with Trey Lance ready and waiting, or so it seems. So anyway, we don't know if Jimmy G's going to be with the Niners, but he won't be practicing with them at least until, at the very earliest, training camp.
It borders for me on a non-story because there's the goal has to be to shop him at some point in camp, probably when disaster strikes another team and he looks more like a favorable option. Why even have him in the building and receive as much as a paper cut?
Speaking
Paper
of
cuts can be dangerous, though.
Oh, they're the worst.
I'm with you, though. I think there are some stories that it's like, I just want to enter it for the record in the news. Maybe there's nothing to say, but you got to enter it for the record, Dan.
That's important to have it on record and for posterity. Also, I kind of missed this. I don't know. Maybe I was out and you guys talked about it. But speaking at OTAs in the last week of May, Kyle Shanahan said of Garoppolo, I expect at some time he'll be traded, but it's not a guarantee. It went on hold when the surgery happened. So, I mean, if the coach is saying he's expecting it to happen, they probably feel pretty confident it will happen, but also the door is open, and then it gets
And they've probably
interesting.
had conversations that have led them to think that, he is sick of being the nice guy, which makes sense.
Well, he's himself said that it's been a trying journey, as nice as he's been about it.
In Deshaun Watson news, another woman has filed a civil lawsuit against Watson, raising the number of women who have accused the Browns quarterback of inappropriate sexual conduct to 24. 24 women now. And Deshaun Watson and his legal representation say that all 24 are lying. And that legal representation, Gregg, continues to make an ass of itself. When they go on the radio and really anytime they open their mouth. And another example that happened during an interview earlier this week or late last week.
Yeah, with our friend Seth Payne. It was on his show
connect with
in
Seth
Houston. And, yeah, Rusty Hardin made the case that happy endings, in his words, are not a crime if money was not paid extra for him. This is Deshaun Watson's legal representation, who's supposed to be helping him out, pointing that out. And then as part of that exact quote said later, doing something or saying something or being a way that makes you uncomfortable is not a crime. First of all, it's not criminal conduct anymore. That's not what we're talking about because these are civil allegations. But number two, these statements were so dumb to put out there, not just from a PR angle, but from a legal angle, that they are quoted directly in this 24th complaint. So this is
lawyer work.
Right. So the 23rd and 24th cases have happened since we've last talked about. At least there was also a 23rd case. And this one now, the 24th one refers exactly to that because it gets to the idea that Watson is okay making these women feel uncomfortable. The allegations also include that he took out his penis and he ejaculated on her without permission, which is uncomfortable to hear, but that's what it is in more than a few of these. And we know that the lawyer and the agent they're not concerned with the women. But I think there's a case to be made for they're not really looking out for Deshaun Watson's best interest either here, because they could have stopped all of this last October. There was a moment there where, according to Mike Florio, the women were willing to accept $100,000 for this all to go away last October. It was part of the Dolphins.
About $2.5 million paid out.
And they could have ended it right then. And the cost that they have now, because the price has certainly gone up, I think, in the meantime, and the cost to Watson and the Browns and his life and everything in the meantime also shows he's not getting good advice, among other things. Not that it's not all his fault.
I mean, Rusty Hardin, it's not been an attorney for 4 weeks. Like, he should know the number one rule is that probably your client is going to go say stuff that requires damage control. Point to Deshaun Watson's press conference with the Browns, where everything that came out of his mouth felt like he was seeing this in a completely different way and accountable for none of it. And so Rusty Hardin, if anything, say nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not arguing that they look completely like buffoons in this whole situation. But at this point, I think it expedites the NFL having to come in with what
expedites. How much longer? Expedite. Just do something.
There was
Make
a report.
An announcement.
I'm just saying,
there was another report.
This hurries it.
Well, the lawyers did say that he finished 4 different interviews with the NFL, and that's over with now.
How is this still being discussed? We should know. And Rusty Hardin said on I believe the same interview, there's a good possibility the NFL will make a decision on Watson's status that he won't like, meaning likely a suspension is coming. Hardin also added he doesn't expect these 2 new lawsuits to change the NFL's timeline. All right. Okay. Well, we'll see. But it is now dragging almost into, as we head into mid-June almost, no word from the NFL on punishment for Deshaun Watson. So that's where that story is at. And that, my friends, was News and Notes presented by Upwork, the world's work marketplace. Learn more at Upwork.com.
That was a bulging, dramatic pause there.
Pregnant with twins,
Yes.
with triplets.
Gregg's wording there. He said words that have never been uttered on this podcast, and it's knocked me for a loop. And
It's understandable.
kind of knocked me aside there. Now I'm back up. All right, let's take a break and then get to projected starters. Autopsy.
Projected starters.
The series is done. Gregg did the work. And the work was good. It was good work, Marc.
It's a great read. It's 8 great reads.
It's a man that clearly has his finger on the pulse. But now there is no longer a pulse on the exercise. It's on a slate. Slab. Sitting there on a slab. We're getting out our scalpels, putting on our gloves, putting our scrubbing in. Do you have to do the hand washing doctor thing before surgery if it's autopsy?
I don't know.
Still do.
If it's a dead internet,
sterile.
if it's a dead internet article, that's where we rested on this. I don't know if we need to wash our hands.
But I think yes, in a real autopsy,
sterilize.
I think being sterile and clean. Yes, you should probably wash your hands.
Let's sterilize.
Seems like the minimum.
All right, Marc and I are going to sterilize now. One moment. All right, we're back. We're fully sterilized.
Feeling pure.
How do we get another contract? I don't know.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Now I know why Dan didn't want to do my idea for this segment.
What was your idea?
It was like, what was it? It was me throwing out the takes and you judging it on 1 to contrarian. But you had this vision of the.
We can still do that though. Why don't we do it a lot?
I like that
too.
too.
It's a poo-poo platter.
Yeah.
I want to see where this goes. The autopsy.
Also, something that shouldn't be
Yeah.
close to an autopsy procedure. Just a trays of food that you're eating off of. Like, it sounds unrighteous.
Here we go. I like that. In fact, let's fold that into it. It's part of the overall conversation.
Okay.
What is it?
I don't know.
Contrarian or
Yeah, it was
what?
like it was
1
on
to
a scale
contrarian.
of 1
Yeah.
to
1 to contrarian. I missed that text entirely. So I
You were on it. I mean, you responded.
I actually also responded to Gregg's text and said, I think that's a really
Missed
good
it.
idea. There's a lot
Missed it.
there. And then it was just.
People are learning too. This is an autopsy of how the show is made.
I missed it. Listen. You got to take ownership sometimes.
It's like
of
when
your mistakes.
Henry sent a very nice tweet out, and he's like, "You guys, you don't even know the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes to make around the NFL what it is. And this is it right here, these texts.
Make
You
them
didn't
think
read.
it takes a lot of work
You
at
didn't
least.
read.
All right, let's get into it. It's on the slab. It's time to dig in. And I'll start here, Greg.
Okay.
You go through all these rosters, and when you see the teams, when you're writing these up, the teams that had the really strong roster, that are Super Bowl contenders, on the teams at the very top of this exercise in terms of loaded teams, quote unquote, what was the biggest flaw on an otherwise really strong roster? Like, what was one that really stood out to you? It was like, oh, wow, okay, this could undermine a potential champion.
I feel like with more than not, it's offensive lines. I would say the Bills' offensive line. I love the Bills in general. How can you not? And if you look at their offensive line, they were mediocre last year, I would say, and they kind of replaced guys with run first type of players. So could Josh Allen be under a lot of pressure here? Spencer Brown, Roger Saffold, who didn't have the best season for the Titans last year. Gravers Titans, they played this guy Ryan Bates, who's a restricted free agent. That's one that immediately comes to mind. Certainly the Packers pass catchers but that's an obvious one.
Right. But I thought you kind of thought maybe that wouldn't be too much of an issue.
No, because I think the rest of the team is great. I would say the Broncos are similar in the offensive line. I feel like there was a couple teams like that where the Broncos' offensive line could ruin everything.
So offensive line could be an issue for some of these teams. How about you, Mark? Throw out something.
So as you go through 32 of these, and obviously it's not like you're just meeting these teams for the first minute when you do it, but was there one team where your impression of who they are, what they are right now, changed the most, that you maybe learned about the most, or maybe altered the way you feel about them?
I felt like the Cardinals pop up as a team that after I was over, it was like, oh, this team could win 5 games. Like when you look at the Cardinals, what do you look at and say, that's what we're good at? What is our big asset here? Now, maybe it's when DeAndre Hopkins returns, it's Kyler Murray and Brown and Hopkins and Moore, and you have this vision of that all works out in a passing game. I guess that's it. But I don't know. The offensive line on paper, not getting me excited. Very thin. I think they overachieved in the secondary, but for the most part, I'm not in love with that group. They have these 2 linebackers they drafted in the first round, Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons, who's kind of underperformed. Their defensive line and their pass rush looks very thin. And you look at the rest of that division and you think about the coaching and the strife that's going on, and I felt much different about them, worse. There were certain teams that I probably felt better too. Colts would be one.
So would you classify the Cardinals as a bad surprise where you went?
That would be a bad surprise.
Yeah. What about a good surprise? A team where you're going through the roster, you didn't think much about them, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what do we got cooking here?
I thought I'd be more down on the Colts than I am, and now I'm sort of convinced their pass rush, for instance, and their defense in general. They lost Eberflus, the defensive coordinator, but I think replacing who was it? Xavier Rhodes with Stephon Gilmore is good at cornerback, and then you look at that pass rush. Kwity Paye, who I liked in his second year, and then Buckner and adding Ngakoue, and they have the guy coming off a torn ACL, slipping my mind, in his second year. I like their defense a lot, and then I kind of looked at the rest of the group, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm back on board. I'm back on board with the Colts. The Bengals were another one. Not that I should be surprised by them, but I would say,
in a good way.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised in a good way. The Saints, the more I looked at them, I'm like, I think people are a little too down on the Saints.
Everyone is jumping on the Lions bandwagon as the concept of a fun team that could, suddenly win some games in a pretty shoddy division. Do you buy into the Lions after this project, or do you say no?
Oh, I'm totally in on the Lions. I think we both.
What does it
right?
mean? What does that mean?
Just being a fun, exciting team.
Well, how many wins, though?
Okay, I had these things written down that were maybe because I didn't know what we were going to do here, totally. That were maybe the hot takes that you guys were great or something.
Let's get to it. Let's
there were some of these that I've already...
And then you want us to grade it 1 to contrarian.
Yeah, I don't even know how that makes sense.
You're famously a contrarian.
We're both medical examiners.
Yes.
We may have different opinions.
Fully sterilized.
One of them was okay, everyone's in on the Lions offensive line. Great offensive line. Looks like a top 5 offensive line. How about the Lions defensive line? Might be a top 5 to 10 defensive line. You're cooking with gas here. that both of these lines could be among the very best in the league. Here's what you're working with. Aiden Hutchinson added to a group that already had Romeo Crennel. Charles Harris coming off a career year. You have these two young defensive tackles who they're hoping to develop. Onwuzurike, you have Romeo Okwara's brother, you have Aleem McNeil. You got a lot of players. I didn't even mention Michael Brockers. They drafted Josh Pascal. I like the teams that's got like 7 or 8 guys where their backups look like some teams' starters. That was a long one.
Is contrarian 10 or is it 100 in this exercise?
I don't know.
I think I thought it was a 10. That was just the way
I was thinking 10 too.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to come in with something if we're going to a scale 100. I'm going to give that a 4 because I think you backed up.
Too much.
No, I agree with the offensive line, and if it's not a wild hot take from outer space with the facts that you provided.
The defensive line would be the top 10 part.
You need these things to click, obviously. Like Aiden Hutchinson has to hit the ground running. Joshua Pascal, you need that guy to hit the ground running. You got Levi
Onwuzurike.
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. He's a second-year pro, so you need these guys to kind of
him and Aleem
make
McNeil,
a
who they
leap.
drafted high last year, both of them, and we're like, fine. I don't know if you can like be totally on board that they're going to be.
People
super
like
good.
Aaron Glenn too. He is a guy seen as an on-the-rise defensive coordinator. Could put himself in. If they take the leap, he will be a hot name on the head coach market.
I agree.
Next year, Aaron Glenn. All right, I will give that a 5.
Okay.
I think that was, and that's good. I think that's kind of where. That means it's a reasoned take.
That wasn't one of my higher ranked ones. I tried to rank like if I only had time for a few.
Well, give us a spicy one.
You did
maybe.
say, I have to say, you said that they could be special in the write-up. Which, all right, I'm going to move it, but that's not contrarian. I'm going to 6. I'm going to put it 6. It's good though. It's a good place.
Lions pop is
Could
not
be special.
contrarian right now.
Right.
It's not contrarian. How about Khalil Mack? Is the third biggest free agent addition to the third most important free agent addition to the Chargers defense. To me, if you look where they struggled a year ago, J.C. Jackson I think is going to have a bigger impact, and then you got Sebastian Joseph Day, who's really fixing a position that they needed more. They also added Austin Johnson, who's like a run stopper, so that kind of combining those two. Max replacing a guy who was pretty good in the first place, Nwosu, who had a nice impact. And like that team, maybe I'm ranting too much, but that team has a lot of questions on their defense. There's a lot of talent, but they got to produce. They didn't produce last year.
I like this one. I'm going to give this a 6.5 because if you get the version of Khalil Mack where you're not getting what you had a couple years ago, then it isn't a massive upgrade from what they had. I do think, though, because he knows the system, he knows Brandon Staley really well, but what it could do is help Bosa in so many ways if he comes in and plays like the good version of Khalil Mack. But I still think that's a spicy take, 6.5.
I think it's almost like the contrarian thing is what's
right. Maybe that was the wrong way to look at it.
But
this is why it needs
maybe
to be
it's like a spicy meatball. I think because that's a pretty spicy meatball. I put that at 7.5 because I think people like to gravitate towards who's the veteran name. Same thing up in Buffalo, like Von Miller. He's going to be the guy that puts them over the top. Well, if it's the Von Miller that showed up in the playoffs, yes. If it's the Von Miller that is another year older and maybe in decline, they're going to need other guys that are going to end up being more important. But I like that one. We're flying. Let's keep rolling, Greg. Give us another one.
Okay, so now I'm just doing these.
Yeah, this is fun. I like this.
Okay.
I wish you guys would have flagged this before this morning.
I like the autopsy. We're getting both.
Send me a text, be like, we should do something like that.
I literally did.
If you read the thread, it looks very much like you looked at Gregg's suggestion and my response to Gregg's suggestion.
Disregarded it.
Exactly.
Because you're a nice guy.
That's unfortunate.
In general, when you want to disregard an idea, you probably just will ignore it.
And it was also, by the way, Sunday for us. We were having our own Sundays, so it was like,
oh, that's true.
You sent it on Sunday?
Yeah, it's like let's not have a brouhaha.
No, I think it was
this
this morning. Was it? Oh, maybe you're right. I don't even remember.
I mean, Kevin Danger's in town.
I think we know
what
Greg was doing on Sunday if he doesn't even remember sending this. But
hey, I was the assistant coach the season finale for the Dodgers, the LA Dodgers. Walker Rosenthal.
Was this on the text thread that also has Graver on it?
No, this was this morning. This was this morning.
Was it?
Just us. I don't know. Who knows? Who cares? All right, here's one.
Wait, I'm checking it.
Josh McDaniels retaining.
That's fun, Marc.
Oh, no, my bad. Mike McDaniel retaining.
Here's the thing, though. Marc writes like, that's fun or sounds good, like no matter what the idea is.
Right.
That's
So-
true. Well, it's kind of why I wanted to bring this whole thing up, because I think our listeners will enjoy the
Also, it was this
personal
morning, so I have no
dynamics of
memory
how
of what's
this happened. Yeah,
occurred
it
in the
was this
past.
All right, I'm taking the L. Go ahead.
All right, here's another one. Mike McDaniel, Dolphins coach, retaining defensive coordinator Josh Boyer. Top 5 sneaky big moves of the offseason that no one's talking about.
I flat out agree with you, because the other thing is you get a new scheme.
That's
you have
a
to bring
spicy
in
meatball.
10 new players.
We're still workshopping
Their
it.
defense was good.
I don't know if it's a spicy meatball, but you look at that defense. Every year I do this exercise. Every year I think this roster doesn't really look that good. And then I'm more down on the Dolphins than I should be. And then Flores and Boyer, because you got to give Boyer some credit. He was a coordinator. Somehow make the parts bigger than the sum of their parts are bigger. And if you look at this defense, it's mostly the same guys. They brought back similar guys. They added some young talent. They kept the same coordinator. New first-time head coach. That's a little unorthodox. It actually, I think, shows a little self-confidence that this is a smart thing. Just keep this together, because they always end up performing better than you think. On paper, I look at them, they're like, okay.
You know what you
pretty
never
good.
see, and it would be the next level of like removing ego from all of this and just truly wanting this team to thrive. What if Vic Fangio had said, look, I'm cool. I'll stay as your defensive coordinator. Keep
would've
that
been
in
next
place
level. That's
and let
tougher.
Hackett do the same thing. I know
That's
that just
tougher.
never happens. But in this case, I'm with you. I thought McDaniel basically said, let's lean on our strength here.
Take out all the things that we learned after the firing, and of course the lawsuit that's going on right now involving Brian Flores and the Dolphins. Just what he was able to bring to that team, him leaving the door, and he's a defensive-minded coach. It will be interesting to see if they are able to continue to thrive with him gone.
I like trying to keep the same system, though, and
Right.
the same
No,
coach.
that's
Well,
I
it's
see
great
what
for
you're
the
saying.
players.
Because on
number
paper,
one.
I should say, like, their front seven could be kind of fun. Jalen Phillips, they got Van Ginkel and Melvin Ingram are their kind of edge rushers. You have Agba, you have Wilkins. Like, that's pretty good. But the secondary could be special. Xavier Howard again back. Byron Jones, great number 2. And then Javon Holland, who really flashed as a rookie safety. And then they like Brandon Jones. Like, that's 4 guys who you think could be difference makers in the same
I'm
secondary.
not saying anything critical about Miami, because I feel like the last couple shows I brought up negative things about them. Certainly there's a path here where the defense plays well.
Right.
Tuitt takes the next step, and this is an 11-win team.
I feel like their
I-
defense has
absolutely.
been under the radar. That's sort of what it's like. What haven't we talked about yet this offseason? Here's something.
I know
the
someone who's
Dolphins
been very
defense.
critical of him, and we're about to talk to him in a few minutes, and I would like to ask him a question about
Oh,
that. He was at Dolphins
good tease.
OTAs last week, Mike Westhoff.
Wow.
All right.
Good tease.
All right, Greggy, give us another one.
Okay, the Cowboys defense. I kind of forgot how good the Cowboys defense was most of last year. Do you guys remember that? They were number 2 in defensive.
I mean, they had a
DVOA.
good year.
Yeah.
It ended in very Cowboys fashion.
I sort of forgot
But-
about that.
After
Yeah.
a disastrous year of the prior.
Right, and I was going into this thinking like it's been a really bad offseason for them. You know, they lost Randy Gregory too on defense and secondary, blah, blah, blah. There's still some good pieces there. But here's the take, which is that their defense comes down to Neville Gallimore and Osa Odigizua making a big leap. And those 2 guys are capable of making a big leap. If those 2 guys make a big leap, both defensive tackles, they could be right back there as one of the best defenses in the league.
Again, here's that word, that S word. You said they could be special. You wrote DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons there. And the Randy Gregory absence, you don't see as a killer for them potentially.
I mean, how many useful periods of football has
He had
Randy
stretches
Gregory
where he was a badass.
ever given you? I can go find them. There was about 300 to 400 snaps at once. It happened in 2017, and then it happened for a stretch last year. Then he got hurt, and he came back, and he wasn't really the same at the end of the year. He's never played more than 500. I think that loss has been overstated, and they have these 2 young guys who I like. Odigizua looked great last year. Gallimore, I thought was great as a rookie. You didn't see it as much. So you have those 2 guys. You have Lawrence and Parsons, maybe the best duo in the league. You brought in Dante Fowler. You got Doris Armstrong, who's done some things. It's like, that's a great group. And on paper, the rest of the defense doesn't get me jazzed, but they're all pretty young, and they were all there last year when it was going so well. So I can't get too down on them.
I had in my notes, I had something about the Cowboys I wanted to discuss and I'm glad you hit on it, because I'm giving this an 8 out of 10 in terms of spicy meatball. Okay. Because there's been so much critical talk of the Cowboys this spring that I feel like it's going too much now the other way, where you look at this roster and it's like, okay, yes, maybe the wide receiver group isn't as good as it used to be. Maybe the offensive line is long in the tooth now, but there is certainly a path where this team again wins that division. That's a double-digit win team. I think we assume this is going to be a down cycle year for Dallas because that just feels the way
That's
the
probably
temperature
where I'll
is.
land, but the pieces are there to be good.
Well, I think also like the division they're in could inflate you to extra wins to get into a wild card if they don't manage to knock out Philly in that thing. But Dan Quinn made this all work. It's the same system, and I'm with you. I don't think the defense needs to have a bigger fall off. I think that the perception around Dallas was the way they mishandled and have mispaid certain players on offense. That had a lot to do with this.
It's mostly the offense, and I'm pretty basic with my concerns there, and I think there are concerns. But the defense, I kind of forgot. Like you look at the cornerbacks, and Trayvon Diggs picked off a lot of passes, but you're not like that excited. But they performed pretty well. Malik Hooker and Jaron Kearse, who are their safeties, not big names, but they played quite well last year.
Yes, and Zeke Elliott, you note here, this is most likely his final season in Dallas, and maybe he's not as explosive as he once was. But there's a chicken and egg situation here because the offensive line isn't as good as it once was either. So you take him, maybe lost a step. The offensive line has taken a step back. That's become a very ordinary running game on some levels, but maybe he also cedes some playing time maybe it becomes more of a tandem approach straight up at this point in the game with Tony Pollard. All right, anything else, Gregg?
All right, let's just do some rapid takes here. I'm just gonna throw out a bunch, and maybe you can pick which is the spiciest.
Marc, you and I go back and forth, and we just give a number after his take.
Okay, I was gonna say the spiciest meatball of the group, but okay, we could do that. We'll go rapid fire. Rashawn Gary, All-Pro.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yeah.
I'm sorry again about the text snafu.
That was okay. It happened.
I don't think that we just blame you. I can understand how it happened. I also thought it happened yesterday, and it was this morning. So.
All right, there you go. Start.
Rashawn
Gary, All-Pro, season coming.
8.5.
Okay.
That's a spicy meatball. That's an 8.5.
Okay. George Karlaftis, rookie pass rusher, the key to the Chiefs defense.
I mean, these are spicy. Now we're getting somewhere. That's a 9. The key.
One of the keys.
Do you want to give a little nug along with these?
I don't know.
Love him so far. It's been like all
I just feel like their pass rush
him.
looks like a big problem if he does not deliver. And PFF loves this. Like, I like this type of player. He reminds me a little bit of a Marcus Davenport, Jadeveon Clowney type. So I think he's going to do well. Maybe not superstar, but do well. But they really need him. Otherwise, I don't know, man.
This is what Andy Reid had to say about him. He goes 100 miles an hour, walkthroughs everything. We had to slow him down. He's relentless.
He's had glowing reports and shorts.
The Broncos, if you added up the skill position players and pass rushers, they have the most quality players in the league at those spots.
Look at you. Say the categories again.
Skill position players and pass rushers. Like, if you're adding up who has the most of both of those combined, quality.
I mean, you just sort of slammed Randy Gregory, but
I'm saying like quality players. I'm not saying top 5 guys, but like quality players.
And then that team went and got a potential Hall of Fame quarterback.
7.8, because I think I do feel like we thought the Broncos were ready to go minus quarterback.
Those two position
groups,
they have about 6 pass rushers, and that most teams have.
I really
2.
want to see Jerry Jeudy take a big leap this year. We all see it as a possibility. What was that?
Broncos country, let's ride.
That's one of the Russes.
Eagles backups on the lines better than a lot of starters. On both lines. We know you like that. And then finally, this is just more of a statement. I'm looking forward to watching the New York Giants play offensive football. That's all.
You know what? Let me say, and that's
a good
spicy meatball from you. That's a 10 after what happened in 42 and again in 46.
46 or more. People don't believe me, but it's just the truth.
I saw that. It definitely caught my eye that you were speaking somewhat positively. And there is, I feel like the Kadarius Toney army out there, the Toney army.
It's just me and Josh Norris, but I know that's probably the other person I'm thinking about.
I guess he would be the X factor because they could use someone that kind of breaks free. And you made the good point, like who's like the outside threat in that group of Sterling Shepard, Wan'Dale Robinson and Kadarius Toney. Like, how does that break down? And does Daniel Jones have the ability to make the most of these guys?
They need Galladay to step up.
Well, how
He's
about
the one
for
guy,
like the
Yeah,
first
there it is,
season in
yeah.
half a decade, you don't lose like 1,400 combined snaps by potential starters on your offense?
Well, that's out of their control. Unless you want to get a strength and conditioning coach on the show next week.
No, I do not wish to. What would he tell us?
Oh, I thought you were saying there were injuries.
Those guys are good talkers. Good
I
meatheads.
am suggesting that a healthy Giants team would have been
Yes.
watchable in years past to some degree.
That could be. This guy gets it. A good ep. Like injury
I see those more
management.
as like 45-second long PSAs that just play before you watch a real video.
Well, I think if you're starting this new feed, you want to think like what can get the most attention and downloads. And I think going through season by season old Giants rosters and seeing what injury impacts they had, that could be it. That could
The number one tenet of this show, news-wise, was always be looking forward. So it would be a massive pivot from what's made this successful.
Yeah, so stay tuned. This guy gets it with Marc Sessler. Also, still potentially in the mix. It's Marc Sessler.
Not in the mix.
Still in the mix.
Not in the mix. I'm with myself also.
That was a spot for a I'm annoyed now drop. Gravedigger. Just so you know.
I'm annoyed now.
There you go. All right. Good
I'm
job,
having
Gregg.
a weird day.
Check out NFL.com/projected starters. Always a great read and a good way to bone up. Gross. Let's take a break and then get to Mr. Mike Westhoff. Welcome back. Our guest today is one of my all-time favorites on the sidelines in the NFL. Great run as the Jets special teams coach from 2001 to 2012, but he has a 32-year career, now retired, with the Colts, Dolphins, Jets, and Saints. Bethel Park, PA native, and now he's got a new book out called Figure It Out, My 32-Year Journey While Revolutionizing Pro Football Special Teams. It's Mike Westhoff. Welcome to Around the NFL, Mr. Westhoff.
Oh, thanks, guys. No, I'm happy to be here.
Let's start with the subhead of the book, Mike.
Yeah, that's a good place.
We love you for your candor, and you've always been a guy that's spoken your mind, and this is what the kids would call a flex. When you say my 32-year journey while revolutionizing pro football special teams, yes. What do you think you did? What did you bring? I know this is kind of a broad question, but this is where we can start. What was it that you brought that was different from the way special teams were before you kind of established yourself and made yourself such a star in that realm?
Okay, I'll give you two answers to it. First of all, I had nothing to do with writing that.
I love it.
Just own it. You did it. You revolutionized it. This is a
No, I
Jets
didn't.
fan in
That's
Dan
written-
here,
that was-
and he agrees.
That's written by the publisher as he went through, and the way he looked at what happened, that's what he put there. So I'm okay with it. The other question is, what did I have to do with it? Pretty much everything.
Oh, I love it.
What are the details? What does that mean, though? Like, what do you think you changed?
Well,
What's a
here's the
lasting
thing.
impact?
Okay, I'll give it to you. When I first started in the job in 1982 with Frank Bush, I was hired with Frank, and it's a great story. You have to read that one. But Frank had jobs available. He needed a strength coach, a guy that might help with special teams. He needed a tight ends coach, all right, assistant offensive line coach, someone to help him. He said, I'm not sure how to do this. I said, I'll do them all. Give them all to me. Now, I didn't do any of them very well, to tell you the truth, but I had them all. So I started. And then we were in our first year, and we played 2 games and went on strike. The players were on strike. I was out for a jog one day and came across Frank. And he said, come on, walk with me. I want to talk to you. He said, I'm going to fire our special teams coach. He said, Mike, he's terrible. I said, don't fire him. He's helping the defense. I'll take it. Let me take it over. Well, yeah, good news, Mike. Thanks a lot. I knew nothing. I didn't know a thing about special teams. But what I realized in a hurry, he gave me a notebook. The notebook should have come with crayons. It was terrible. But anyway, so I started this. And what I found out in a hurry was that there were no special teams coordinators back then. It was divided up among the staff. There was very little, if any, creativity and that type of thing. Very little. It was just it was not innovative. And there was also almost no regulation. So you could try everything. So what I did, I developed a philosophy. I wanted to have a coverage team emulate a defense. And I wanted to blitz. My defense was going to blitz. So I went to Bud Carson, one of the great defensive coordinators in NFL history. I said, Bud, take me through the perimeters of blitzing. I patterned my kickoff coverage after that. I believe anybody would tell you that was the toughest coverage to ever go against. We were really good at it. And it presented problems. Then, as an offensive coach, I thought, well, okay, what am I going to pick off return? What's this to be like? Well, I wanted it to be a power off tackle running play. So I double teamed and I tracked. My kick out was a wedge. I learned how to cut the backside off, just like an offensive line would have to do. And I patterned it after that. And we broke pretty much most of the records. So, it worked. And that's how I developed myself as a special teams coach and a coordinator. But I came along at the right place and the right time. I was part of it. I think I had the integral part of taking it to a pinnacle. It has since, because of rule changes, et cetera, it's become, it's gradually deleted out a little bit. You don't have the number of plays. So things are vastly different. But I believed I was part of that rise. Also, there were a great number of other coaches that jumped right in with us, and we took it to a point of real prominence. And it was fun to be a part of, and that's what I wrote about.
Coach, I've got to ask you something because, as we researched and looked at this book and some of the quotes coming out of it and some of the stuff that you wrote, I mean, it's obviously very rich with your time with the New York Jets. You talk about Tim Tebow in a very pointed way. You've got some stuff on Eric Mangini, Rex Ryan, the whole caboose. But I read that you had to utilize your girlfriend as what you called a dial-down instructor because some of your takes and some of your anecdotes were a little too hot for the public. Is that true?
That's correct.
Let's bring them out now, Mike, if you could.
No, I won't do that. I would read parts to her almost every night. And sometimes she would say, Mike, we might want to dial that down a little bit. And for the most part, I actually did help me with that because I'm not afraid. I'm not trying to be, overcritical. I try to be very fair. I mean, some of the things got a little bit misunderstood, like with Tim Tebow. I'll give you a real quick one. Tim Tebow is what he is. He's a marginal quarterback at best. He's a Heisman Trophy winner that deserved to win it, in my opinion. He managed what he had exceptionally well. Now, when we signed Tim Tebow, it was under the premise that he would be a multi-talented guy and play a number of positions and be like a wildcat quarterback. He was going to play for me on my punt team because I could do all the fakes with him. I'm the only one that upheld that part of the bargain. I used him, and he did a great job with me. Tim Tebow was not part of the problem. Tim Tebow is what he is. Is he a starting quarterback in the NFL? I don't believe so. I think Bill Belichick had the same opinion. Ask him. You don't believe me, because he did the same thing. They let him go. But that was the reality of the situation. And we never used him at all on offense. So in my opinion, that was very, very much misused. And Tim Tebow was only part of that equation.
That always felt to me, Mike, as a Jets fan, an example of one hand not washing the other, where you knew ownership perhaps and certain figures in the organization, let's get this kid in the building, will be the story of the league. And then the coaching staff, for the most part, you had a defined role for him that you used. I remember him being the punt protector in that role throughout the season. It became pretty apparent that he didn't really have a role on that offense, and that reminded me of when I think about that era of Jets football, when things really started to snowball in the wrong direction and the team really went downhill in a hurry. I always think of that time with Tebow. I'm also curious. Your career ended in 2000 after the 2018 season, Mike. The final game, I guess, that you coached, Saints-Rams NFC title game, a game that you've said before was the toughest loss of your long career, and that, of course, was the nickel Roby Coleman game between the Saints and Rams. Was it difficult to go out in that manner? And was there a part of you that said, I can't go out with a game that painful when you had a Super Bowl window there? Take us through that a little bit.
I didn't see it that way. It was time for me to go. I had coached 32 years. That was a very good football team. We had taken that team kind of to its peak, which I'm correct in that assessment. Drew had a great career and was leveling just a tiny bit, but such a great player. I think Sean Payton is an absolute excellent football coach. As I wrote about in my book, he's the best on the field teacher I ever saw. Trust me. I used to sit there on Thursday and watch him design a play. I'd see the exact same thing on Sunday. Exact. That's how deliberate he is in his teaching. So that for me was, I felt that team. I felt the year before that we could have gone when we had the Minnesota Miracle play beat us. So that was a good football team that had fought its way, and that team needed to go to the Super Bowl, and I didn't get that chance. I was disappointed. For me personally, it was I felt that they had a real weapon on their punt team, and where they ran fakes, they were very good at it. I researched it. I went back and studied everything they did all the way into St. Louis. I think I came up with my best individual game plan that I've ever designed. I had them nailed. I had 5 defensive linemen. Every time they were going to punt the ball, we were in a space. I ran a 7-man front. We were going to double the wide guy, the flyer or gunner, as you call him, to our right side where he or Hector punted the ball, to our left side where he liked to throw his fakes. I took my corner, I moved him inside, and I backed him off 5 yards. And just to backpedal, and if they did throw the fake, he could attack it, because if you throw out a punt formation to the wide receiver, there's no pass interference penalty. And I practiced it. I had Teddy Bridgewater throw the ball. I was totally prepared for it. But I made a mistake. With that corner. I took a corner who was really a proactive player. He's the guy that could fly in the direction. And I put him in a reactive position. And when I look back now, they ran a fake. We all knew it was coming. We're all screaming, fake, fake, fake. But as this corner went back, as he did 100 times in practice, now when he planned to go after the wide guy, the receiver, he turned his back. He made a mistake. I should have flopped the corners. We would have killed. Now, it only resulted in 3 points, but the way I look at the game, that was tough for me. I'm the one who made it, no one else. And I did that. But the plan that I had, one of the best plans I ever designed. I thought it was brilliant.
I love that, taking us behind, because, that was kind of a forgotten play. I'm totally with you. I think that 2017 to 2019 Saints team, unfortunately for Saints fans, I think is going to go down as one of the best teams to ever not win a Super Bowl. That little 3-year kind of late breeze stretch. But the way you're talking about, like your matchup with Bones Fossil, the Rams coordinator at that time, special teams, it gets to what you were talking about and how you revolutionize the sport. And that's what football is kind of all about, is like specialization. That's why Bill Belichick always tries to talk about Paul Brown as the guy who changed the game more than anyone, because he made it more specialized. And you are kind of part of that evolution of the game, making it more specialized, drilling down. You were someone who coached against Bill Belichick for most of your career, a lot of your career. You were with Miami for 15 years, and he was in New England for part of that as a coordinator, and then certainly when you were with the Jets and everything. And I know he has a big love for special teams, and he approaches it differently. How are those matchups to you? How were you guys like different as special teams minds, and what kind of stands out to you about your battles with Belichick over the years?
He was much more conservative than I was. He was going to make every effort to not let that part of the game beat him. He knew he had the big advantage on offense with Tom Brady. He was going to make sure that I didn't do much against him. I feel if you added up how we played against each other, I come out way ahead. I got him pretty good.
Love that.
But he's tough to beat because he's smart, and he's very disciplined. And a lot of times I'd be doing all kinds of shifting things on our punt team, and he'd be yelling safe, safe. The only reason I was doing it is that I didn't have a punter that could punt the ball out of his bedroom. So I was just trying to level the playing field, and it worked. It helped me out. And so we were able to get him a few times and do some things against him. But I have tremendous respect as to how he handles and coaches the game. They're a very well-coached football team. But I loved going against them because it was such a challenge. It was something
But a quiet flex there. You wiped the floor with him. You just said, you got your points in there against him. I like it.
Coach, I got to ask you another one. Like, so I know you're comfortable retiring, but you were just at Dolphins OTAs recently, and a lot of people are high on the Dolphins because they think Mike McDaniel's a boy genius ready to unleash. But you were not very impressed from comments I read about what you saw from the offense the day you were there.
No, I wasn't. Now, don't get me wrong. We're talking. It's a mini camp. They
Sure.
rescheduled their OTAs and their mini camp, so it's a mini camp practice. I know that it's early. I know that they don't have their game plan in for their opening day. I totally understand that. But what I also know is that game plan that I watched being executed should be opening first or second day of mini camp. I want to see the mini camp game plan executed. I've been on the field in my career with some pretty good quarterbacks. Don't forget, Dan Marino, Drew Brees, Brett Favre, Chad Pennington when he was pretty doggone good, Vinny Testaverde. So I've been on the field for a lot of very good offensive practices. In my opinion, I saw very little which resembled anything of a good offensive practice. I just didn't see it. And now, is it going to come later? Sure it can. Sure it can. But I didn't see it, and that's what was disappointing. Do I want to see opening game performance? No, I don't. But I don't want to see what I saw. I was very disappointed that wasn't better than what I thought it would be better than that. I was disappointed.
Well, earlier in the show, we had some positive thoughts about the Dolphins roster. Now there's a little yin and yang in there. Dolphins fans can look ahead and know there's a lot of football to be played between now and September. All right, Mike, last thing I have to ask, because I'm a big Parcells guy, and the part in your book kind of broke my heart a little bit because I remember seeing you at Hofstra with Bill, and the situation that happened with you going down to Miami with your friend to watch practice, and then you came back with the Jets. And Parcells, he sends the letter to the league complaining about you being there, even though you're under contract with the Jets. All sloppy, and I think you called it in the book.
Yeah, I know what I called it.
You called it a chicken letter that the Parcells wrote.
That's right.
Have you guys spoken since that happened, or did that end the relationship?
It ended it the second he did it.
Wow.
And I had a good relationship with him. I always looked at him as kind of a big brother. And when I went over there, I was wrong because I was still under contract. Now I was totally gone from the Jets, and they hired a new coach. I wasn't in the press guy, but I went over because after the surgery worked so well, I knew I could now come back and coach. So all of a sudden, wait a minute, I don't have to retire. I'm coming back. So I went and visited some camps, and I went over and visited with Bill. He and I sat in a golf cart the entire day. We ate lunch together. I wrote him a thank you letter. I talked to his head coach about what I saw in practice. I had a great, and then all of a sudden, the Jets signed Brett Favre. Then they pressured me to come back. They want me to come back. I didn't want to go. They offered me a ton of money. I turned it down. Now, when I went to visit them, I was wrong, not Bill. I was wrong because you really can't go to a camp if you're under contract. He didn't know that, but I didn't know it either. And I'd never done it. I just went to watch practice. The one thing I didn't do is I didn't go over there to cheat. For him to write a letter like that was totally inappropriate. And so I blew up. Now, I coached the game. But if I don't coach the game, then it looks like I did go over there to cheat. And it was, you want to call it? Yeah, it was a chicken shit letter. Now, I could push the letter, then you wouldn't have any argument because you'd know. But I didn't do that. The one chicken shit thing was enough. That's enough. So I let it go with that. And that's exactly how I felt. I've never talked to him. And if I ever did talk to him, again, it wouldn't be even the beginnings of a pleasant conversation. I'll leave it go at that.
Passionate football man. Did your girlfriend convince you not to put the letter in the book?
No, she had nothing to do with it. She never saw it.
Mike, thank you so much for your time. This is going to be a great summer read on the beach, whether you're on the Jersey Shore or wherever. You can get the book right now and figure it out at mascotbooks.com right now. And then everywhere else, Amazon and anywhere else that carries books, July 12th. Mike Westhoff, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck and enjoy retirement. You certainly earned it. A lot of fun talking to you today. Okay,
guys. Thank you, too. It was enjoyable.
Thanks,
All right.
Mike.
Coach.
Most of it.
There he goes.
Most of it.
I love that man. He always spoke his mind, and you hear it there. Kind of reminded me of my dad on certain topics when my dad Keith starts to get fired up talking about something that has annoyed him or someone that upsets him. You can actually hear it. Doesn't matter when the story happened. As he's telling the story again, that kind of aggressive anger about it, and that's what we heard with Parcells.
I know part of me wants them to, make
that's what
make
I was
good
hoping.
before one of them's gone. But yay, sometimes you're just done with the person in your life. Maybe that's just as healthy to just be like, I made that decision. That's over.
Did he say he was only happy with most of the conversation?
Yeah, he probably.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I'd love to know what made him unhappy. But
maybe it was like bringing up some of these memories.
Well,
I wish
how it
I
works.
kept
It's
my
in the
mouth
book.
shut when I sort of came back and was like, oh, but you stuck it to Belichick.
I mean,
maybe that was
he's
it.
Yeah, that
technically
was it.
written.
I think
He's
that was
written a
it.
memoir, so it is technically based on
I-
memories.
but,
I love that because
If there was one person to make it awkward in this room, it would be Gregg.
It
No doubt.
would be. I do love that. He was like, look, he was much more conservative than me. If you added it up, I had my way with him ultimately, which is that's what you
He
want.
speaks
Honestly,
his
I mean, this guy, I love the history of the game, and he was with he was with Don. If we had all the time, we could have asked a lot of stuff. He was with Don Shula,
Right.
and then Jimmy Johnson, and he was in Miami that whole time. He was there for the end of Don Shula, and he was such a good assistant, and he did some offensive coaching too, not just special teams. That when Jimmy Johnson came in, he saw both of those eras, just like a fascinating. Like those guys have all the best.
And he
stories.
sticks up for the people, the way that some people feel about the Rex Ryan led Jets. That behind the scenes, Rex Ryan was very different, very organized, and that the special teams were the best in the league because of him.
He's a
Because
great
of
coach.
Westhoff.
He's a great coach, and I did want to ask him. We're running a little short on time, but I did want to ask him also. If there would be, famously the Nickel Roby Coleman play led to the failed pass interference rule change. If there was anything in the game at special teams that he feels they need to make adjustments on, but maybe that will be for the second time we speak with Mike if he chooses to join us.
It's hard out there for special teams coaches. He alluded to it. The rules are changing in such a way that they have a little less impact and a little less flexibility than
Right,
they
and
used
they get
to.
treated-
And it's all safety.
I mean, start with
reasons.
kickoffs,
They're
you
good
know.
reasons. But yeah, kickoffs have changed quite a bit.
Yeah, an assistant coach is that I think multiple times in his career in the book he talks about being approached by management. We want you to replace this guy that is our current special teams coach that we don't like, and it's like August 20th, and it's like the special teams coach. It's kind of a thankless gig where you get noticed more when you fail at it. But to Westhoff's credit, for that instance he was talking about that led to the Parcells fallout, the Jets wanted to fire the current special teams coach, and he said, "No, I'll take over." But that guy's not going to be fired. He's going to stay. We'll make it work, even if it's a little bit awkward, looking out for his own positional group.
That's
so
how
there you
we
go.
do it for each other.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
All right. Good up. We'll be back on Thursday. We got a special show on Thursday. We're going to be on the road. It's a road show. I mean, it's like 8 miles. What is it? How far is it? I don't know. We're going to West Hollywood for the second annual Pride Cast with a cast of all-stars, including my brother Kevin Danger Hanzus.
Oh, I like to hear that.
In the traveling party, but also Connie Fox, maybe a former producer with the show.
I think people can
we
probably
love,
connect
we
the
love.
dots on this one. Yeah.
Probably can connect it. And just so you know, I said, Graver, give me a song that connects with, in your mind, a Pride Cast show in West Hollywood. So let's turn this up. This was Justin Graver's choice with Randy Chavez. Sterilize.
This is where we need the producer camera in the back. They've all got their hands
Mark, let's
up.
wash up again.
All right.
Mark and I are heading
Back
to
to
the
the sink.
sterilization chamber. And we will see you on Thursday. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Until then, heed the call. Great ending.